Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode in the series Conversations with Shelly. I'm Shelly for those of you who are joining me for the first time. Thank you so much for deciding to stop by. Welcome. And for those of you who are not so unfamiliar with this space and you join me more than two, three times, I will say welcome back. Always a pleasure to have you. Loving the fact that you're sticking and staying. And this week, I want to just start off by saying I'm very, very appreciative of your presence. So, what is this week's topic? What am I talking about? What am I here to drop within your spirit and within your souls? This is another one of my relationship controversial, provocative topics that I wanted to, raise with you simply because I had a conversation and the thing about it is that starting this journey for me on YouTube has resulted in me having conversations with persons at random. I'll just pass somebody and I'll say, what topic would you like to hear about if somebody has a YouTube channel? Yeah, that is how grassroots I get with this thing. And I was at a I won't call the name of the company, but I was at a company recently and I raised it with one of the workers there and I said to him, if you had a YouTube channel, what topic would you want somebody to talk about? And of course, he thought it was like a joke, like, really, no, Shelly, come on. And I said, no, man, me serious, because, I mean, I could come up with so much topics that are within my own, as I said, within my own experience, within our own knowledge. And they may not be things that are resonating with you guys in the community. So he paused a little bit and he went away. He went and had his lunch or something, and he came back and he said, I have always wanted to talk about the difference between when somebody says they are alone versus when somebody says they are lonely. And I thought, like, that is a really good topic. That is like something that I would want to raise within this space of provocative thinking. And when he said it to me, I immediately thought to myself, yep, that's gonna be my next topic. So, and I should have asked his permission to call his name. I'm going to use his initials. KL, thank you for raising that topic with me, so that I could dive into some research and revisit my relationship books and all the things that are out there to assist me in order to bring this topic to you. So, based on what I've said, I'm sure by now you must realize what the topic is going to be for this week. And the topic is being alone versus being lonely. What's the difference? Yeah. So I want to start off by first asking a very real and serious question. I guess a question that he had asked himself as well. And the question that I pose to you is, have you ever been by yourself but you felt totally okay? Or have you ever been around people and you still felt empty? Now, that's the difference between what it means to be alone and what it means to being lonely. Now, for the very simple explanation that I can offer, and that which I found in my research, is that being alone is a state. And in most instances, it is a physical state. So it's a physical state or condition of being by yourself, right? It may be a state that requires some level of peace and tranquility. It may be a physical space that you require that allows you to think clearly. It may be a physical state or space that allows you to build confidence and self awareness. Whatever the physical state is, it is a state of being, right? And what will happen within this alone state is you will find yourself wanting to study alone, or you wanting to work alone, you have a project dealing with and you just want to be by yourself, or you want to take a quiet walk, you don't want to have anybody, within that quiet time that you're having. And most of the times, it does not necessarily require anything connected with emotional state. It's more like a physical state. But let us look on the other side of the conversation. And the other side of the conversation is, what is it to be to being lonely, right? And this is where the thinking is now derived. So when you think about being lonely, right, it is now moving from a state to now getting into a feeling, right? So you're now going to be feeling something. Something is going to be evoked as a result of this condition, right? So when you think about the being lonely, being a feeling, yeah, it often brings out stuff like disconnect, a feeling of disconnection, a feeling of not being seen or not being heard, and a feeling of being uneasy or uneven, in relationships. Yeah. So while it's about an emotional distance, being alone is more so of a physical distance, while being lonely is an emotional distance or an emotional space that is being created. And how you can identify the difference in a physical distance versus an emotional distance is in things such as, if you're in relationships, being, your friendships, your spousal relationships, or your marriage, you may get a sense of, you feel ignored, you feel misunderstood, and you feel like nobody really gets you, get what you are experiencing. And because of that, you maintain an emotional distance in order to treat it what it is that what it is that is not being understood. Now, if you're going to take relationships, being marriages or friendships, or work relationships, the main difference between being alone and being lonely in as the case may be, as I mentioned, is one is a physical state of mind, a physical state of being, while the other is an emotional state of being. But if you're thinking about the idea and the concept of being alone, you need to understand that being alone in and of itself is not unhealthy, because the reality about life and human beings, more so as we go into different eras, as we move from one era and we're now in the technological era and we're into this era, you'll find that people will need more space. There's this intrinsic thing within us with living in this time to just require more space, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you are lonely. It just means that you need time for yourself. So being alone is not unhealthy in and of itself, yeah. But if you think about being lonely, then that is where you now have to understand and appreciate that there is some amount of unhealthiness that may reside somewhere there. And you may want to look for some warning signs, some early signs. And remember, guys, I'm speaking about relationships now, being alone and being lonely in a relationship, right? So you want to look for some warning signs of being lonely when you start to not be heard, when no matter what you say, whether you say it loudly, whether you say it calmly, whether you say it with tears, no matter what you say, it goes on deaf ears, goes unheard. Then another warning sign is going about feeling unappreciated. This is when you now start to realize that this is an emotional thing that is happening. This is now a feeling, because you're now residing within what you're now sensing, the sensory indicators is what you're now pulling on. Then you have those two that allow you to feel invisible. You know, you're unheard, you're unappreciated, and you're unseen. So these are now clearly things that will allow you to create some emotional distance, because at this point in time, whether you want to create it, yes or no, it is being created for you. And this is one of the obvious difference that you will establish or observe with alone versus lonely. Because when you're alone, you are the one that is actually creating the distance. You're the one that is creating that physical space, right? But when you now move into the emotional distancing, which is where loneliness comes from, it is usually not as a result of something that you are doing. It is more so what another person causes you to do. Now, you may ask a question: why do people confuse the two? Because I guess this topic became important for my colleague, because he maybe, and I maybe should have asked him, he maybe was grappling with the confusion that resides in understanding and appreciate the two concepts, right? So, because society tells us that being alone is wrong. Oh, you're not to be alone because it may bring on mental depression and mental anxiety. We have not appreciated that being alone has its pros. As I said, you may just want time to study, you may want some me time, and it allows you to be able to unwind and can now take on the rest of the world. But we have been indoctrinated with this idea that if you're lonely, something is wrong with you. People don't like you, or you don't like yourself, and we go into this. Yeah? And because of that, and because of what society dictates and tells us about being alone, we sometimes see it as something wrong. Being in a relationship, again, society tells us if we are not alone and we're in a relationship, then we must be happy. That's what society tells us, And society tell you that if you're in a relationship, you can't be emotionally distant, because that in and of itself should be fuel to you. You should be okay. You should be happy. You should be joyous. You should not want to be sad and all of these things. But guys, this is not true. This is not true. You can be single and be at peace. You can be single. You can be alone and be at peace. And you can be paired up. You can be with somebody and you're very much unhappy and just never at peace. So the idea of being single and at peace is something that we need to appreciate and understand. And the idea that you can be taken and be very lonely and very unhappy is also another side of the coin that we need to also appreciate and understand. Now, the confusion is what lies in the gray area, where nobody seems to understand that how can you be taken and you are so lonely. And I think that is because our minds as human beings think that because we have somebody, then everything that is supposed to bring you joy, contentment, resides in that coupling. But then there's the idea of you being coupled with the wrong person. And we will talk about that in another episode, where we're going to talk about meeting the wrong person at the right time and meeting the wrong person at the right time, right? So you may very well be taken and very lonely and very unhappy, and the rest of the world is looking on you going, why is she unhappy? She not married. Why is she unhappy? She not have one man. Why is she unhappy? She not have a girlfriend. Why is she unhappy? She not... You get the point. And as we go through those confusing moments, it is incumbent on us as persons to demystify what society wants us to understand about being alone and being lonely, and realize that there are many of us out there who are single, many of us out there who are taken, and we are quite unhappy in the taken scenarios, and we are quite happy in the single scenarios. We are quite okay being by ourselves, yeah? But I know that there has to be some resolve something that can allow us to now comfortably exist in an alone state without questioning whether this is wrong or right. And also to be in a lonely state and again understanding what is wrong about it. Yeah? So, what can you do if you are alone now and struggling with being physically by yourself? Because you will have persons that are alone and not okay with being alone. They want company. Yeah? So if you are alone and struggling with your aloneness, find some hobbies. Build a routine that you enjoy. Spend time with people that are of like mind and people that are supportive of you. And if you're lonely, some things that you can do in order to resolve that is to have some honest conversations. Set some emotional boundaries so that persons understand where you stand in this relationship, right? And address the things that are making you feel lonely and emotionally distant. And ask yourself things like, am I growing here or am I shrinking? And I think that is one of the psychological questionings that must be done when you're trying to decipher whether you're alone or you're lonely. Because if you're in a relationship and you're okay being by yourself, and you're not emotionally and you're not going into the feelings of it, then it means that you're growing in that relationship. Well, there may be things that are happening there as well, but that's for us to divulge into. But one of the things that is critical for you to understand, or one of the things that you need to appreciate, is whether in that relationship of your state of being alone or lonely, is it causing you to grow or is it causing you to shrink? That is what you need to analyze in order to make a determination as to where you stand and what it is about your lonely or your aloneness that is making you question who you are or what relationship looks like for you, right? So, in closing, I want to make it very clear, very, very clear, that being alone is not about where you are, and being alone is not about how you feel, and no one is better than the other. So, being alone, being lonely, is not about one being better than the other until it starts hurting or affecting you. So, if you think that I'm saying being alone is okay or being lonely is okay, that's not the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation is that whatever state or feeling it is, be it alone as a state, physical state, or being lonely as an emotional feeling state, if either of these are hurting you in any way, that is when you need to do something different. So, my call to action, as I always give you, is if you're ever feeling lonely, even when you aren't alone, right? Assess how it makes you feel. Does it allow you to shrink or does it allow you to grow? And if any of what was said to you today resonated in some way, shape, or form, consider sharing it with a friend. Consider commenting. I would love to hear how you were able to make a determination as to whether or not being alone or being lonely hurts you. Because again, that's the only way you can determine which you need to change. Yeah? And no matter which of it you land on, understand that it is not a weird place to be because we, at some point in our lives, we go through one or the other. And it's for you to understand that it is not weird, it is human. Yeah? So, thank you for giving me always your listening ears and your eyes if you had the time to be visual with this episode. And I always welcome you to consider subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting, turning on your notification bells. and tell a friend to tell a friend. Yeah. And as always, thank you once again for sticking and staying and for joining me on yet another episode where I drop some nuggets in your spirit, drop some conversations for you to have and to discuss in your varying circles. And as always, I will see you on the next one.